Hello students, welcome back to your history class. I am Mrs. Jenny Shah and we are doing the chapter Industrial Revolution. Last class we had discussed the long question and answers. Today we will do the last of the long question and answers and then we will discuss the map work. Okay, let's begin. So now we spoke about the political effects of Industrial Revolution in the last class. Today we will speak about the important evil consequences of the Industrial Revolution. So today actually this answer will cover both blessings as well as harmful effects. First I will talk to you about the blessings. While industrialization was a boon in some spheres, it has also done much harm in others. Thus, it was a mixed blessing which had both dark and bright sides. Let's talk about the blessings of Industrial Revolution. Number one, production by machines met the growing needs of the growing population of the world. Number two, machines made it possible for mankind to meet the primary necessities of food, cloth, and shelter. Machines relieved man of the drudgery of tiring and unpleasant jobs. Machine brought more leisure time, which in turn can now be utilized for the promotion of arts and culture. Large-scale production of several kinds of goods brought many articles of comfort and luxury within the easy reach of even a common man who could otherwise not even dream of them. Machines made life quiet and comfortable. New inventions brought new joys and added different pleasures to our lives. Development in the means of transport and communication developed trade and thus brought all the countries of the world nearer to each other. These were all the blessings. Now we'll talk about the harmful effects. Industrial Revolution shattered the rural life by turning the farmers into landless laborers. Rural unemployment forced the unemployed farmers to migrate to cities in search of jobs. Cities became overcrowded and problems of insanitization and housing rose. Industrial Revolution made the workers' life very miserable. They had to live in slums around the factories and they fell prey to different diseases and epidemics because of lack of sanitization and other health facilities. The conditions inside the factories were also worse. Smoke, noise, and poisonous gas affected the workers' health so much that they became physically and mentally sick. The ugly desires to get more profits forced the ruthless factory owners to exploit the innocent children and women whose labor was cheap. The strain of hard work and inhuman treatment took a toll, and many children died even before they reached the prime of their lives. Their lives became miserable as if they were living a hell. The Industrial Revolution divided the whole society into two conflicting classes of the capitalist and the workers. And even today, they are suspicious of each other. Industrial Revolution gave birth to imperialism, and in the bid to make more profit, the industrialized nations invaded, conquered less fortunate countries, whom they then turned into their own colonies and started to exploit their resources. So, industrial revolution was a mixed blessing. While it had some bright sides, it also had a dark lining. Okay. Okay. For this chapter's map work, we need an outline map of Britain. In this, we will have to mark a few cities, and Manchester and Birmingham. These are the two centers of iron industry in England. Leeds, Glasgow, and London. These are the centers of textile manufacturing. Okay, so you must know iron manufacturing, iron industry, and textile industry. There are These are the most important five. I have shown you two maps here. One is an empty map, and one is the map of England. I will just mark these over here for you. So accordingly, you can do the marking in your own maps. For the upcoming examinations, you will need an empty map of Britain as well as an empty map, like a political map of the Italian states, because these are the two chapters that are coming in your examination. Okay, to mark Glasgow, Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, and London. So the London will be here, Birmingham, Manchester, and Leeds, Glasgow. You should also know Newcastle. You should also know Newcastle, Liverpool, Bristol, Edinburgh, okay, and Belfast. Sorry, Belfast is not here. All right. All these that I have made the markings, I have not named it, but I think you can. And in the examinations, you are not allowed to do digital map work. You have to do physically. So in case you do not have a map, I will be providing a map in the exam. At that time, you will have to download, you'll have to print, you'll have to mark, and then you'll have to upload. So for safekeeping, I would request you to arrange for an empty map of the Italian states, the Italian political map, an empty, and an empty map of the Britain, that is United Kingdom. Okay, keep these two maps handy for your examination. Okay, now we are going to start with a new chapter today. Okay, this is the next chapter, that is Displacing Indigenous People. This is the 10th chapter. This chapter will recount some aspect of histories of native peoples of America and Australia. Okay. So this chapter will talk about some of the histories of the native people of America and Australia. From around 18th centuries, some areas of South America, Central America, North America, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand started to be settled by immigrants from Europe. So people from Europe started to settle in these areas. And this led to many of the native people being pushed out into other areas. The European settlements were now called colonies. And when the European inhabitants of the colonies, they became independent of the European mother country, those colonies then became states of the, they became either states or they became countries. Okay, so in the 19th and 20th century, people from Asian country also migrated to some of these countries. These Europeans and Asians form the majority of these countries, and the number of native inhabitants are actually very, very small. They are hardly seen in the towns, and people have also forgotten that they had once occupied much of the country, and that the names of many rivers and towns are derived from the native names like Ohio, Mississippi, Seattle, okay, Wollongong, and Paramuta in Australia. So we are the descendants of the original people, and it was our ancestors who formed the first nations. This theme will tell us the story of what European settlers did to the native people of America and Australia. The natives of the Europeans represented competing notions of civilization. So, till the middle of the 20th century, American and Australian textbooks were only used to describe how Europeans discovered America and Australia. They did not mention the native people except to suggest that they were hostile to Europeans. Now, these people, they were studied by the anthropologists in America. Okay, and much later, that is from 1960, the native people were then encouraged to write their own history or to dictate the history orally so that someone else could write it down. Today, we can read historical works and fictions written by the native peoples, and visitors to the museums in these countries can see the galleries of native art and special museums which show the aboriginal way of life. The new National Museum of the American Indian in the USA, it has been curated by American Indians themselves. So, what are the sources for this chapter? The oral history of the natives, historical and fiction work written by native people, and galleries and museums of native art. So the American empires of Spain and Portugal, they did not expand after the 17th century. From that time, other countries, that is France, Holland, and England, they began to extend their trading activities and to establish colonies in America, Africa, and Asia. Ireland was also virtually a colony of England, as the landowners were mostly English people over there. Okay, so in 18th century onwards, the immigrants from Europe and Asia, they pulled out the indigenous people from the areas of South America, Central America, North America, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. In many people, only the names that remain of monuments of indigenous people are the names of those rivers, etc. So from 18th century, it became obvious that while it was the prospect of profit which drove people to establish colonies, there was a significant variation in the nature of the control established. In South Asia, trading companies like East India Company, they made themselves into a political power. They defeated the local rulers and they annexed their territories. Okay? They annexed their territories. So Spain and Portugal, they did not expand their empire after the 17th century. France, Holland, and England, it extended their trading activities and established colonies in America, Africa, Asia. Ireland was also a virtual colony of England. Okay. Now, East India Company retained the older, well-developed administrative system and also collected taxes from the landowners. Later, they also built railways to make trade easier. They excavated mines and established big plantations. In Africa, Europeans traded on the coast, except in South Africa, and only in the late 19th century did they venture into the interior. And after this, some of the European countries reached an agreement to divide up Africa as colonies for themselves. So the world, so the word settler is used for the Dutch in South Africa, the British in Ireland, New Zealand, and Australia, and the Europeans in America. The official language of these colonies was English, except in Canada, where French was also an official language. So, the logic over here was that Spain and Portugal stopped expanding. France, Holland, England started extending their trades, and they started to establish colonies in America, Africa, and Asia. The main reason, the main motive behind it was making profit. And because they wanted to make profit, they started to establish colonies. So the nature of the control of the colony, it varied. Okay. Now, if you look at India, the East India Company, it became such a big political power. This East India Company, it defeated local rulers, it retained the administrative system, they started to collect taxes, they built railways also for us, which made trade easier. So they were also exploiting us. They excavated our mines and they even established big plantations for us. On the other hand, if you look at Africa, okay, Europeans were trading on the coast of Africa, except for South Africa. And in the late 19th century, they started to go into the interiors. First, it was only on the coast. Later, the late 19th century, they started to go into the interiors. And then after some point, okay, some European countries, they reached, because they were fighting, all the countries were fighting for control. So they all decided, they had an agreement amongst themselves that we will divide Africa amongst ourselves. We will divide the colonies and each one of us can control one part. Okay. Now, which were the names given by the European countries? Okay, there are some names which are given by the European countries, which are given by the European to countries of the New World. This is there in your textbook on page 214. Please look at it. America was first used after the publication of the travels of Amerigo Vespucci. Canada, from Kanata, which is village in the language of Huron Iroquois, was heard by the explorer Jacques Cartier in 1535. Australia, this word was given in the 16th century. It was named for the land in the Great Southern Ocean. Austral is the Latin for the word south. And New Zealand, this was a name given by Tasman of Holland, who was the first to sight the islands in 1642. Z is Dutch for the word sea. Okay. So the geographical dictionary, it lists over 100 place names in the Americans and Australians which begin with the word new. There's so many. There's New Jersey, there's New Guinea, there is New York, New Zealand, so many. All right. So with this, children, I am ending this class here. Next class, we will start talking about North America. With this, I end today's class. Stay home, stay safe, take care, keep learning. Thank you.